This video is a redo for families who want to move to Colombia. Follow along.
Hey, you watching, man? Right now you're watching dcbornrob on YouTube.
Okay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is you're located. Thanks for watching. My name is Rob Christian, also known as dcbornrob, dcrob, Rob. I answer to them all. Thank you guys for watching. In this video, again, I am going to replay a video that I did a couple of years ago. For those new viewers that haven't seen my older videos, if you have a family and you're thinking about moving to Colombia, or you're thinking about moving to Colombia and having a family, this is a good video for you. I did it prior in two segments. I'm going to put them two together, so it's going to be a little bit long. But if you are interested, this would be a good video to get a take from a family that actually moved there from the United States. So let's just jump into the video. Okay, so I'm here with Nicole and Phil Jones. I'm here with the Joneses. We are in Medellin, Colombia. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is you're located. So we want to ask them a couple of questions, but we more so wanted to get more information about what it's like to be an expat moving from the U.S. here with a family, not just a couple, but with children as well. So let's just jump right in. And where are you guys from? What made you think of coming to Medellin? How was it like so far?
So we're from Atlanta, Georgia, like right outside of Atlanta. And we have very diverse backgrounds as far as coming to, or actually traveling in general. Mm-hmm. We started traveling around in an RV, and as we went further and further away in an RV, we started opening up our minds to doing other adventures. One of these adventures was going out of the country to Colombia in general. Not specifically Medellin, but Colombia in general.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so what was the question? I'm sorry.
What made you come to Medellin?
All
Well,
right,
tell me the story. I know you were just telling me that you guys came here January 1st of this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you actually counted down while you were on the plane.
Yeah,
we're
we
like
counted
the
down
first plane to hit Medellin.
Right.
At the beginning of the year. We counted down over, as a matter of fact, when we went right over Cartagena, is when we got to midnight.
Right.
So by the time we got here, it was like 1 a.m.
Wow.
So it was interesting.
Yeah, so we drove through the streets. We heard all the parties.
Yeah, it was. I was scared.
Fireworks, and it didn't stop. Even the next day when we woke up, people were still partying.
See, they went to sleep. See, I was up the whole night. I couldn't. I was scared out of my mind. All right, so we had to take the cab ride here. Well, if you're not used to going up and down in elevation, you will get sick.
And they
Before
drove
the tunnel too, so
fast.
Before the tunnel.
Yeah.
And so, on the way here, we actually had someone I was talking to at the airport, and he said I had to take Dramamine before I come to Medellin. I'm like, Dramamine? I'm like, okay. So we started heading down. We hopped in a cab, which was crazy scary. Why? Because our Spanish sucked. It was horrible. And so trying to get to this Airbnb we never really seen before. We don't know how to get there, so we're using Google Maps.
We didn't even know what a porteria was.
No.
Okay, the guy was saying the porteria, go to the porteria and get the key, and we're like, we're trying to translate the porteria. We have no idea what that.
Like, what we
No, it's the door.
Yeah, no, the door.
Yeah.
Go to the door. Go to the door and get the key.
We had no idea what that was.
Come on, really?
But our Spanish now has improved significantly. But when we first came, it was very poor, very poor.
So you didn't speak Spanish at all, or just?
Well, I mean, we knew
little.
we knew good morning, good night,
I could count to 10.
Bye.
Yeah.
Wow. So you start this year? You started from
scratch.
Really?
Yeah. Even the children, they had no prior knowledge of the language, and both my son and daughter know how to do well, pretty much, with other kids. I heard them talking to each other earlier today, and I didn't know that they knew certain words. So it's amazing how being in the culture, being immersed quickly, you pick up on things.
Yeah. You have to use it.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you, what made you think of Medellin? Of all places in the world, I know you've been to Costa Rica, been to Mexico. I'm going to ask you later too, where else have you been? But what made you pick Medellin, Colombia in general, and then Medellin specifically?
Well, initially, I gotta say it was my idea to go to Colombia. So I figured Colombia. I started looking at the cost of living and up and coming areas. And one of the areas I think was underrated was Colombia in general. I didn't know specifically Medellin. So I'm a scuba diver, And I thought the best way to get more scuba diving in was to go to the coast. And the hot city near the coast I was thinking about, like it's literally hot, is Cartagena. And so I was trying to get her to come down to Cartagena for around 6 months. And so secretly she had a different plan, which we found out.
Yeah, I did some research on Cartagena and I realized that it was too hot. And let me tell you, we were in Key West as he was talking about going to Cartagena.
You can feel that heat
No,
already.
Key West,
And Key West
during
was
the summer.
miserably hot.
Oh yeah.
And so I said, well, let me check out some other places. And I came across Medellin and I realized that the climate was perfect. Everyone kept talking about the climate and the infrastructure and, the internet is working well. And, I thought this will be a place where I think our family will thrive. And so we never been here before. Prior to us coming, I booked tickets and we just took a jump. And here we are 8 months later and doing pretty well. So,
Okay, well,
yeah.
let me back up even further. What made you leave the U.S. or want to leave the U.S.? Leave the matrix, leave everything behind.
Well, we broke a couple of laws. No, we both had really high intensity corporate jobs. Me as a network engineer, and my wife is being a project manager for some very reputable companies. But in that, we had a requirement to work very intensely on what our careers were. As an engineer, I'm all about statistics and numbers. So I started figuring out the statistics about how much time am I spending with the kids. And I figured that out to come up to around between 14.5 and 15% of the time of the year. So I figured between kindergarten and high school, I would have actually spent 4 years with them, which is not, I think it's not good.
Yeah, it was definitely the quality. I think we realized that we were investing in more of our material things than we were in our family, our relationships. And we decided that we wanted to just peel back. Of course, we did our research and took our time in figuring out how, and it was a very intense process, but we just thought if we saw other people on YouTube and we're like, if they can do it, somehow we can figure it out. And that's what we did little by little. We just figured out how we can peel away,
I think we wanted to do a lot of research, and while we may have done a lot of research later on in the game, initially, when we first started, we're always on the move, ready to go. So we did a lot of traveling inside the United States.
Right.
And sometimes it would be impromptu to just different places, anywhere from New Orleans to up in the Smoky Mountains. So if you go under that impression, what we did was in our character. It's what we did.
Right.
Let's go. Let's plan, but let's go.
Right.
We made that decision relatively fast.
Yeah, we did. But that's our history. I think that we move fast. That's just how we have some kind of synergy where we make up our minds and we just do it. We do it until there's little resistance.
You have some caution there, but you can't rely specifically on the fear factor.
Right.
People get caught up into that fear factor, and what holds them back is that fear of loss, the fear of losing money, jobs, friends. And so at some point you have to make that leap.
Yeah.
You have to take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys not only took a leap, but you took a leap together as a couple, and you also took a leap with children too.
Yeah.
So let's talk schools briefly. I know we spoke of it a while back inside, but you moved the kids here January 1st, and I think that happened to be the time where school begins here. It's not like a regular U.S. school year where it begins in August, September, and runs through June,
Right.
or May, June. Here it starts in January, so you had to go through an open enrollment process or to get interviews and so on.
It's more interviews. It's the interviews are more about behavior. They want to see psychologically where your child is, also where they are mentally, how they learn, how they interact with other children before they make the investment in the child, which at first we frowned upon it because we were like, they need to hurry up. Why can't they get our kids in school? But that's a really good thing, I would say, to really see or review how you can invest in each child individually. I would say that's a great thing here. But the process is very annoying, it's very frustrating. It takes time. You go to different schools to figure out, you know, if they will even accept your child.
Yeah.
He had his feet on the ground. He knows way more about it than I do. So if you want to give your...
Initially, it wasn't about hitting the ground and getting into schools. Initially, we had our daughter wasn't in school, but our son was being homeschooled. And that's kind of a continuation of what we were doing back in the States. We're doing a lot of traveling in the United States, is we had to find a solution in that, and that was homeschooling. So when we got down here, although we were interested in the educational aspects, it was more from a homeschooling standpoint. So we had to make sure, you know, you had internet and things of that nature. What we found out, though, was that it would be better for the kids to have more of the social aspect, especially being in a new country.
Yeah.
Why not experience a new language, learn a new language? And the best way to do that is to become integrated into the schools locally.
Right. And it was good for us because we could have some separation, because we were on the road with them for, 6 months. It's every day, you know, homeschooling and spending time, which was good, but we needed a little bit of time to ourselves.
You learn a lot about the family in 600 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to say the least, we ended up finding a school that fit our children's needs and was willing to invest in our children, even though they knew that they didn't really have an English speaking program specifically for our kids. They do have a curriculum that involves English, believe it or not. But I think our children, actually there's a couple of more children there that are from the States, which is great. But the classes are smaller.
Now that's specifically for the school we're at now.
Yeah.
But typically for the school structure here, it's usually 40 kids to one teacher.
Right.
On average. And that's me visiting 4 different schools. They all said around the same thing.
Yeah.
So depending on what time you get here, another thing that you have to be aware of is that the school spaces fill up relatively fast. And if you want to not just get caught up into the politics of having any English-speaking people there, the public schools seem to be a little bit more difficult, as where the private schools are willing to subjugate the kids into a little bit more of an English-style format and introduce them to being bilingual. The thing about it is that even though their want is there, the infrastructure is not there. So you might have more tourism and more Americans, more English-speaking people, but they may not have the infrastructure to accomplish it. One of the things that they did with us was to try to structure a program specifically for our kids.
Did the people that you had to communicate with at the schools, did they all speak English?
No.
That's your first challenge. I can imagine you're going from school to school and
speaking
with limited amount of Spanish. Yeah.
Usually at each school, they would have one or two people that spoke English. As a matter of fact,
we would use those people, you know, like, hey, you know, whatever you're doing, I'm sorry that we have to interrupt whatever you're doing, but we need you for an hour. And they would come in the room with us. You know, a lot of people, they hired like translators. Sometimes we would just use the resource that was there, you know, and save us a buck or two.
Yeah. Well, you would think that, okay, you have the teachers that would be more familiar with English, but that's not the case. A lot of the older generation of people, the English part of that,
there's a gap.
I found that out, yeah.
So, and we don't know exactly what that gap caused. I think they wanted to rearrange the infrastructure here for being more competitive on a global standpoint, and they realized that English had to be one of the competencies here.
Gotcha. So before you decided to move here, did you get any pushback from family, friends? Did you get any questions? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You kidding me?
I know I did, specifically. He says no, but I think people were just, with my job, typically you don't leave, right? Like, I mean, I worked for a plant, and so people retire there. They work 30 years up, and they don't leave. And so when I presented it to my friends and coworkers, they thought I was a little nuts. There were some people that thought it was brave and they wanted to do the same thing if they could, you know, back in the day. My parents were dead on, and so yeah, and our neighbors thought we were bizarre.
Yeah, you're talking about going from really cushy jobs, right? So at that point, I was working as an engineer, making really good money, but everything else was missing. So when I decided to leave, the general sentiment from the people at work were, I wish I could do that. I want to do that. Hopefully I could, go for it. From my family, from my side of the family, it was more, okay, go ahead and, go, because they know I'm crazy anyway. So they said, okay, just be safe and, contact us and let us know. Take care of your family, but you're good. So it's a really big difference in the people. But
very polarized.
Yeah, very polarized. But, honestly, my personal viewpoints on it is if you have a bunch of people that are telling you a bunch of negative stuff about traveling and experiencing new things, you might want to evaluate who your real friends are.
And who you're getting that information from.
Because your true friends are going to want the best for you and your kids, and they're going to more so encourage you. But if they do have any concerns, it won't be focused toward negative aspects in your travels.
Right.
One question I always get is it safe? Because that's the
Yeah.
first thing everybody goes back to what they know from watching Netflix. You know what I'm talking about, watching this series. And I never watched that series until I moved here.
Really?
Oh.
And then I just wanted to see where things happened and so on. I never watched that before
Wow.
moving here.
That's actually kind of good.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is there's a big misconception as to the whole Narcos thing and what it really is. That happened, 20, 30 years ago, and so it doesn't exist now. As a matter of fact, they're trying to erase that from the history. The reality is that, comparatively speaking, between where we lived at in the United States and here, I think that there was more chance of me getting into a violent altercation or some kind of altercation back in the States than there is here. But that's not to say that there's no violence here, that there's no crimes here. There are, but it's going to be more along the lines of petty thefts and things of that nature.
Right. Generally, we feel safe, even without my husband, and it's just me. I generally feel safe. If I'm with the children and he's not there, I feel safe. But of course, you need to, do the normal things.
Yeah.
Don't have your cell phone out. Don't wear expensive jewelry. Still be aware of your surroundings.
Try to
things like
blend
that.
in.
Right.
If you're walking around with flip-flops and shorts, there's a good chance they will know right off the bat that you're a tourist,
American.
and you might be targeting. And then being smart about your environment. A lot of people don't know this though. At night, especially going from the, now I wouldn't say from the airport, but more so here in the city, is that you have to be aware of taxi cabs. It's been notorious for taxi cabs to not put you in a really good situation at night because they may think you're going from a club and you don't have your wits about you and you're not familiar with English. They could take advantage. So what most people do is actually take a picture of the back of the taxi before they hop in it.
Yeah.
So and that was like the major impactful thing that we see as far as travel or getting around Medellin.
That's a good thought. I never thought of that before, and I've only taken 2 taxis since here. I've only
Oh, really?
Ubered.
Oh,
Only
wow. No in-driver?
No.
Not even in-driver?
So a lot of
Oh, you
people.
Oh, you never heard of it?
A lot
No.
of people you'll hear about this application. It's called N-Driver. N-Driver is used by a lot of Colombians, and you can save a lot of money. The thing about it is, if you're not from Colombia, you have a United States number. So when you try to download the application, it'll say you're out of the region, and you can't download it. It won't let you download it. As with Uber, it allows you to download it, but a lot of people are not aware of this, that Uber is illegal here.
Yeah.
So while you can use it, you may save money. There is this weird thing that could happen.
Yeah.
Or
Or you can get pulled over and questioned.
If the driver gets caught driving Uber, they take his car
Yeah.
for something ridiculous, 10 years or something like that, and then they fine him, and there's a chance he may go to jail for a couple of days.
Yeah. Just be
So,
familiar with
yeah.
the person you're driving with, the color car, the tag. This is my friend,
Come up
such
with a
and
backstory.
such. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not telling people to lie, but if you do Uber, just know that there's a little risk factor to
Yeah.
it.
Okay, well, I've used Uber all this time, and I didn't know. Well, here's my thought. If anybody gets in trouble, it won't be me.
Right.
It will be the driver. And hence the reason when you go to the airport, The second time I came back, I called for an Uber and I got a text, and it says, "Are you male or female?" I said, "Male." "What color shirt are you wearing?" I said, "Black and gold." And I'm like, what the heck? Well, what he's doing is he's checking to find out who you are, and then he'll approach you on foot. He'll walk up to you on foot. And this happened to my girlfriend last weekend when she came in. And she's like, and then he wants to grab my bag and go across the street to the parking lot. That's normal for a guy, but for a female, she's like, no. She can work it out to get a taxi to come in town. But it is illegal, and they are very sketchy, and they're very nervous when they get around the airport. They don't, I mean, they like that run, I'm sure, because it's, it's a little bit further, but yeah, the consequences, I didn't know was that high.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. If you're coming here as a group, the best thing to do is to wait until you get in front of the airport, and they have large white vans where you can split up the fare, and as a group it may be less expensive. If you do know Spanish, you can take the bus, which costs less, comparatively speaking. If you take one of the transports, it may cost you close to anywhere between 50 and 80 mil pesos. But if, comparatively speaking, if you take the bus, you may only spend, I think it's what, 5. Yeah. So there's some advantages there, depending on how many people you got traveling with you.
I got you. And I've noticed that the buses will take you to a certain location, like San Antonio or somewhere else, and then the cabs are there waiting for you to take you the rest of your journey anyway. But let me switch things up a little bit. What I didn't bring up already is that Nicole and Phil are actually YouTubers. They vlog, and they have vlogged their entire experience, I guess, before moving here and now.
Right.
Tell us about what was your thought process about opening up your life to show yourselves as a couple, as well as parenting with your children in another country.
Yeah, I think for me, it was more, I'm very reserved. I don't really like to put myself out there, but I compare it to like a testimony where you talk about, the good and the bad, and you share your story in hopes that it inspires somebody else and that it'll take somebody else a little bit further. And once I looked at it that way, I thought, well, it's such a beautiful story, family, we're able to do this. Why not, give the gift of telling our story to somebody else, and that's how I look at it.
For me, it started way before Medellin. We started traveling around in the United States in an RV. And we realized there was a lot of things that people were either not aware of, or the viewpoint from our, being our situation with kids was somewhat skewed. Everyone wants to glorify everything. They don't like to show the mistakes, the pitfalls, and we wanted to kill that expectation. When we came to Medellin, it was more of an extension of that same feeling, but now we can take it to a different level. When we were trying to look at or do our research as to what was happening here in Medellin, we noticed that most of the videos we've seen were more centric around single males wanting to party, and so my preconception of Medellin was that it's a big party city, when in all actuality is far from. There's a lot of family-oriented places around Medellin outside of places like Poblado and Morales.
Yeah. Let's touch on that, because a lot of people think and I'm sure a lot of other YouTube channels, that this is a party city. The guys come here for the girls, and that's the end of story.
Right.
You drink and you party and everything is legal or allowed. But it's much different. Yeah,
we actually know quite a few families that are here from the States that have children, and they just live regular lives. They put their kids in school, they do parks on the weekend, they do museums, and they live normal lives. Now, I won't say that we haven't partied ourselves. Since we've been here for now going on almost 9 months, we've built relationships with other people where there's a common trust with babysitters, and we've been able to do like parent-adult night with other couples and things like that. But for the most part, we like to do a mix-up of everything, right? Restaurants, parks, clubs, museums, and kind of keep it, just like a normal life, I think.
Now, the interesting thing about Medellin is that you can go from a party town to a residential neighborhood in a matter of a few blocks, where you have the notorious areas such as Poblado, where there are a lot of bars, a lot of tourists there, a lot of tourism happening. you're going to see that party type atmosphere. Whereas where we're at now, it's more residential, it's more laid back, and you'll see those differences, which I think are major compared from one side of the city to the other.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now that brings up where we are. How did you decide to move to this area? And I'll pan around and show it after we're done, but I mean, this is a beautiful area, and you guys have an awesome view of the city, which one thing this city has is a lot of places to see, a lot of great views.
Yeah.
And this is one also, and we're right next to Tres Cruces,
Tres Cruces
mountain, which I think we both hiked. It was rough. It was rough, oh brother, let me tell you.
It was a series of events. So, and I recommend this to anyone. My wife found the perfect Airbnb. It was almost like, I don't know if how much. Oh, okay, all right. So it's far from perfect, but it got us in the area that we needed to, around the area that we thought we wanted to be in.
Right.
That allowed us to take short little adventures around the area, become more familiar. As we did that, we started finding opportunities which were a little bit closer, and we said, you know what, we like this area. We decided we like the area. But because of that, it led to where we're at now.
Right.
You expand the amount of area you're familiar with, you become open to more possibilities, which can not only save you in the quality of life you have, but it can save you in time and money, depending on what kind of deals you can find.
Yeah. It was definitely happenstance. We didn't know anything about the area before we booked the Airbnb. We just thought, oh, it's a decent Airbnb. But turns out we actually liked the area. And it worked out. I know for other people, their stories are a little bit more different, where they didn't have such luck. But we only looked for one apartment.
Airbnb was questionable.
And we ended up finding the right apartment. It was just, I think it was 2 apartments in this place.
Yeah.
It was one or the other. We picked that one, and that was it. It was very smooth.
So with your experience, what's the advice that you'd offer anyone that's watching if they want to move here as a family? What's the first thing you do? Do you get an Airbnb for a week or for a month and then branch out from there?
Well, one of the things that we've been trying to compile is data to help other families move over. And so the way we found an apartment, how the way we got our kids enrolled, how the way we got involved in the community was a step-by-step process. But we documented this down, so if other people are coming here, we can help them out.
Right. I would definitely recommend coming here for a couple of weeks in an Airbnb. Get familiar with how Colombians do business, and then from there, make your decision, because you will need documentation for sure.
Yeah, it's very much based on documentation and not credit. Since you're, depending on how much time you're planning on spending here, if you're just going to be here as a tourist, you might not want to, I don't think you're going to be able to get a long-term rental. So you're going to be restricted to your Airbnb. And depending on what type of area that you're going to be in and what your mode is, depending on your visa, you may be open to other opportunities that you might not be able to see otherwise.
As far as resources, for expat resources, Sweet Georgia Cafe, which I've spoken of quite a few times and done a few interviews there as well.
Yeah.
That's been a good resource for me to meet other expats. You know, again, we all decided we're tourists. We don't like tourists ourselves. But that is one location that you can go and get resources. Also, some Facebook
Facebook groups.
Yeah, Facebook groups. Any other suggestions as far as resources?
Facebook groups helped me out tremendously. I was on Facebook groups even when I was in the States. I was trying to make relationships with people, you know, over the internet. And that's actually how I found the people that we know now, is through it was a football game happening, and we said, let's just go. We were here 1 week, and we went to this football game, and that's how we pretty much met everybody in this particular group. And yeah, that's how it worked for me. Do you have anything?
So it is about your involvement. Facebook groups, I think, really helped. I didn't see too many YouTube channels that were like that, and that's why we started up ours, Traveling Jones.
Yeah.
And also being able to look or integrate into places like Sweet Georgia Cafe. They have language exchanges down here where you get more involved with the locals, but also other people that have the same background and intention you may have.
Right. Now, to be honest, we only did Sweet Georgia one time.
I did.
When we first got here, we went on a Monday.
I did more than once.
And then after that, we kind of did our own thing. But yeah, we only took advantage of that resource once. But, you know, if you're coming down here and you're new, take advantage of that resource. You'll meet a lot of different people who will offer you, you know, a lot of information. So
That's definitely a good first stop.
Yes.
Within your
For
first
sure.
couple of days, you're going to run into and you may run into somebody that you know or that grew. I met a guy who grew up 3 blocks from me.
Wow.
I'm a year older than him, so we know elementary schools, everything. And
Wow.
go figure, from Washington D.C., we're here.
yeah,
Wow.
I
So-
met someone like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a big age gap, but he went to the same elementary, same
That's
middle.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
So traveling, I know you traveled across the U.S. You mentioned Costa Rica, Mexico, any other countries?
Nope,
That's
just
been
Mexico and Costa
primarily
Rica.
We like as soon as we started traveling outside of the U.S., we realized we know what we want, and so we're very targeted. 1, I like scuba diving. 2, we like the beach and we like the water. So that's why we ended up in.
Hence why we were in Key West for 3
and
months.
that's how we ended up in Key West.
Yeah.
So everything seems to be centric around that. The only thing that was out of place is actually coming here, where it's more landlocked.
There's no
but
water.
There's no water, but the opportunities and the weather here kind of outweighed that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just brought up weather. That's my number one reason for being here. Number one thing that I like about Medellin. I mean, we're outside now. This is amazing. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun's straight above us.
Yeah.
And it's still beautiful
Yeah.
outside.
And this
What's your
is-
top 3 things that you like?
Oh, good question. For me, it's definitely climate. It's definitely not being able to, or not having to drive. And then I would say the people here are very amicable. They speak hello, you know, good night. It helps with integrating here, because in the States, you have to always be on guard all the time. And when you come here and you're able to kind of let that down, I think it helps you grow a lot faster. So I would say those 3 things: the people, the not having to drive, and the climate, for sure.
For me, number 1 is the weather.
Yes.
Love it. This, what you see now, this is year round. So I love it. The second thing, the mountains, the views.
Yeah.
I always had this thing about the mountains. So the views here are spectacular. No matter where you go, no matter what part of the city, you're going to see some type of view, which I think is wonderful. The third thing I would have to say are the people.
Yeah.
I don't see the angle. No one's trying to approach me at some kind of angle. I don't have to figure it out. So it kind of falls in line with the whole stress factor. Yeah. But the people here, they go by a saying. They call it tranquilo.
Tranquilo.
which means tranquil, and they are very tranquil, to say the least. If you're trying to hurry up and get something done, there's a good chance you won't hurry up and get it done because everyone's kind of laid back.
Yeah.
But that's actually a good thing, so then you don't have a bunch of people trying to pressure you, and it takes the stress off.
How was that adjustment for you guys moving here? As far as the speed of things, things do not move fast here. That's one thing. There is no fast food.
No.
There's nothing that you go to McDonald's and you're going to wait.
Right.
Everything is, and you have to go ask for your check. They don't come, rush you off. There's nobody moving at a fast speed. No one's on time.
Right.
Well, how was it fitting in, coming from the U.S.?
Yeah. It wasn't that much of an adjustment for me. I actually appreciated the relaxation. I think I needed it personally. There were a few times, like with the schools, where it was just very frustrating. But I would say that probably was the number one frustrating thing for me, was the schools, as far as the relaxation. Other than that, I think I pretty much appreciated it.
For me, everyone thought I had PTSD. The atmosphere is such a dramatic change from the hustle and bustle of the United States, everything that's going up there right now, to coming down here, where it's I wouldn't say it's the polar opposite, but there's a certain level of distinction between the arguments and what people have or facing down here versus what they face in the States. That's not saying the States are bad or anything like that, but it is a different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I know which your top 3 things that you like are. What's your top 3 things that you dislike about here?
I really, like I said, the people I really appreciate. I don't like Sometimes the stares, I know like it's part of their culture to admire what they see, but it also makes you feel uncomfortable at times, and that's something I'm still figuring out. I think that the food, you know, depending on where you go, there's a couple of spots that we know that we appreciate that have flavor, but there's also some spots where it's like, I wish I had something in my pocket to sprinkle on my food. And then hair products, okay? So this is a struggle for me because my hair type is not like the majority, and so I can't just go into a store and find a section for me. You know, it's definitely a struggle, which means that you may be making your hair products at home. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Unless you bring an ample amount of products here for your hair, you're probably gonna be looking at Pinterest, putting some stuff together to make in your home. So.
Okay.
So, now it got to me. Okay, not to make anything too controversial, but my top 3 things that I dislike about Medellin would have to be 1, the traffic. Even though I'm not driving a car, you still have to travel from one place to the other. So depending on what part of Medellin you're going into, the traffic could be very crazy.
Yeah.
And Poblado is known for having one of the worst from what I see and from what I hear, Poblado is far worse in traffic than any other part of Medellin. The second part would have to be, let me think about this. The second part would have to be the food. I'm a foodie. I love food. And so I have this expectation that when I see something that looks delicious and sweet, I get delicious and sweet. But here, you're lacking.
Oh, good catch.
The second thing I'll have to say is the food. Although I'm a foodie, and so I like how the way food tastes, I need certain things in my food. If I have a cake, I want it to be sweet. If I have other food, sometimes I want salt. But the 2 things that you're lacking here are salt and sugar. So if you're looking for something sweet, or you're looking for something that has a lot of spice to it, there's a good chance you will not find it. So that would probably be my second thing. The third. Okay, so this transition. At first, it was the money. If you're visiting here, if you're a tourist here, getting your money out of an ATM, your exchange rate may be horrible and you'll get fees. So I would just suggest using like a credit card, something that you can use internationally where you might get actually save money. But if you're going to be here long term, you want to start transitioning your money over to Colombian pesos. If not, again, it could be really difficult. And that was
And we'll actually talk about that more on our video coming up about budgeting and what we do and how we are able to manage living here. We'll go more into detail, but that's a good one about the transfer rate or exchange rate.
Okay, well, guys, I appreciate your time. I'm going to wrap it up here, but you just mentioned that you have a YouTube channel. It is A Traveling Jones.
Correct. A Traveling Jones.
The information will be below, and there'll be a link also for it. So again, I appreciate you guys' time. It's a beautiful day. You have a beautiful location. I'm going to pan around a little bit and do a couple of shots just to show you guys where we are. But what's the part? I cannot say this correctly. Loma de los Bernal.
You'll hear different versions of it, but in general, it's Loma de los Bernal. You'll hear Los Bernales, Los Bernal. So there's different variations of that. If you're trying to do some research on here, as far as the area, we also have some information posted on keepmydaydream.com. And on keepmydaydream.com, you'll be able to look at airfare as well as some good Airbnbs and have access to our blogs so you can kind of peep out what we've been seeing and what we've experienced here in Medellin. And so that's keepmydaydream.com, and we'll have a link to that, and also our blog, our travel blog.
Which is interesting. I watched it one the other day. You guys were grocery shopping.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so all that information will be below, but I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Nicole.
Pleasure.
So I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure you go down and hit subscribe. And definitely like. It helps that YouTube algorithm. You know what I'm talking about? See what I'm saying?
We have a YouTube channel, like it.
Please comment and share if you liked the video. Please subscribe and kick the bell.